Unless you have been living under a rock, most members of the queer community would be familiar with the terms "Shantae, you stay" or "Sashay away." Two phrases that seal the fate of drag queens on the Emmy-winning RuPaul's Drag Race each week. Drag has been a big part of queer culture for centuries, and drag performers have been pioneers of expression and equality. It was, after all, trans women of color and drag queens who were involved first in the riots at Stonewall. Drag performers have gone through many states of being in fashion, out, and then in again over the years. But on February 2nd, 2009, on a US television network dedicated to queer content called Logo, the very first episode of RuPaul's Drag Race aired. It's impossible to deny that a show of this kind becoming part of the current zeitgeist has paved the way for drag performers in other parts of the world where it may not have existed before. Drag now has a mainstream spotlight on it, and because of this, drag performers all over the world are now stepping out purse first, ready to have a moment to bask in its warm glow. How has drag changed in one of the world's smallest nations over the years? Where does Iceland's drag hold its roots? And what is the future of drag here? I'm Jonathan Duffy, and this is Cruising. In comparison to other Western nations, drag as a publicly enjoyed art form is relatively new in Iceland. Prior to the 90s, the main exposure of an audience to drag would be male comedians wearing dresses on television. After that, there were short spurts of drag within the community between the mid-90s and the early 2000s. There were a handful of queens who would occasionally perform weekly shows in Reykjavik or tour around the country. Openly gay Icelandic pop icon Páll Óskar had even been known to don a wig and a dress to parody female divas. The main change of drag history, as they say, came in the form of a national drag competition to find the next drag king and queen of Iceland. A part variety show, part beauty pageant experience that was one of the only glimpses of drag audiences could see. The competition ran from the early 2000s until around 2014. It had, in a way, created a thirst for more opportunities, and in 2015, everything changed. The final crowned Miss Drag Iceland, Go-Go Star, the alter ego of Sigurður Guðjónsson, teamed up with an artist friend, Hafstein Reginason, and drag enthusiast Þórhalla Hafþórsson to create something for the queer community in Iceland. Inspired by shows like RuPaul and what they had seen happening abroad, they gathered together a team of performers and artists to attempt a one-time experiment. To put on a drag show that was not a competition, but just a night out. Something open to the public that was all-inclusive and designed to be a platform for performers and a source of entertainment in a safe space for audience members. In November 2015, Dragsugur was born. The name is a play on words in Icelandic, sugur meaning the draft that creeps under your door. The group was determined to make drag a thing in this country, and their first night was a huge success. Flash forward 2 years later, and Dragsugur has become one of the most successful queer performance ventures in Icelandic history. There are now multiple shows per month, and many performers who are able to make a living from what they do. I spoke to Go-Go Star about how this all began and what this means for a man who was once a boy in the frozen north of Iceland. Why do you think drag has become so popular now in Iceland?
Drag now, it has gotten so incredibly popular in such a short amount of time. In just 2 years, there's been like a scene where there really wasn't one before. And I think a lot of that has to do with RuPaul's Drag Race, the TV show, getting more and more popular. and like finding its way here and just getting the audience really invested and interested in what a drag queen is and what a drag performer is. And while in the States, I've noticed and I've heard that it has really had bad effects on the drag communities, and really like, oh, so now you have to be on the show to be relevant. Well, here, well, there was nothing happening. Now people are like, what? There is Icelandic drag? So cool, let's go see it. And yeah, so I think that has really helped us. And it's also just both us at Dragsur and, I mean, the cabaret, the circus, the stand-up comedians, the improv people. It kind of happens all around the same time. Around 2 years ago, it seemed everything was just starting. Because I think there was an overarching theme of like people wanting something more to happen in Reykjavik nightlife. Something more than just music and going out partying and getting laid. Like they wanted something more in the entertainment world, and all these people worked together in their own way to create something more. And now 2 years later, it's like really transformed the landscape of Reykjavik nightlife.
So within the drag community of Iceland, how important has RuPaul been influencing the current drag scene?
I would say quite a lot. The Drag Race queens have really kind of set the bar regarding aesthetics and makeup skills and complete looks and kind of attitude on stage. However, I always felt like the performance styles of Icelandic queens or performers here in Iceland tend to be a bit more theater-based than what we see on Drag Race. And I think that has really kind of kept in, even though Drag Race has heavily influenced it. It tends to be a bit more kind of interactive and theatrical.
You mentioned that there is, and you perform in America quite a bit, and you've mentioned that within the American drag scene, there has been some negative impacts of the RuPaul's a drag show for them. Like people have come to expect certain levels or certain things from queens, or as you said before, they need to be relevant. Has there been any negative impact on the drag scene in Iceland from RuPaul's Drag Race?
I think the most negative thing that has happened is that because people watch the show and maybe they've only watched the show that's been their only time seeing drag, and then they come to our show, it's like, well, she wasn't as good at this one, or she doesn't look like this one, or she isn't doing it as they would on the show. And it's always like, well, of course not. It's not, I don't think they're much better or much worse. It's just a different style. There are so many incredible styles of drag. And I think we're very like diverse here in Iceland. And I think I have never seen as many kings as here, like being part of shows. Genderqueer performers and queer musicians are also part of the community. And it's so much more than just pretty drag queens, which is I feel like what the show really kind of highlights.
And as far as the community, the greater community goes, how important is drag for it?
Well, throughout history, drag has always kind of been kind of the highlighted, glittery, very kind of forefronted thing that has been a part of the queer community. And I think now, and like in Iceland, it's really been missing that for such a long time that I think having that back has really kind of energized a lot of different people and a lot of different things. And I feel like we're more visible now than we've been in a very long time. And there's just so much happening now that wasn't happening just a very short time ago.
Gogo Star is one of the biggest names on the Icelandic drag scene. What made you want to do drag in the first place?
The first time I did drag, I was kind of forced into it by my friends, and I really wasn't sure what was happening. And then I just kind of fell in love with it. I always loved performing. I love being on stage, and I love entertaining most of all. And it was just such a different way, and like helped me put myself in a different mindset, in a different character, that I felt so much more free to express myself and have fun on stage. Also, I was dealing with my own like coming out and dealing with who I was, who I wanted to be, and it really kind of helped me along the way. And Gogo today is not the same character as she was when I began, and now it's so much more that it's just an extroverted version of me.
Tell me about the time that you were forced into doing drag. How did that actually happen?
I was I was in a theater club in college, in Akureyri, which is a rather small town, and we were putting up a show, and we were just testing out different roles and testing out different things. There was this one drag role, and I'm like, ooh, let's put up the tiny shy boy who just joined the class. Let's put him up in drag. I was like, okay, sure. So they strapped me on a corset and put me in like leopard tights and threw a bunch of glitter on me, and I looked fabulous, and I felt it. And the show was We Will Rock You, the Queen show, and it was a quite good production, but I had 3 lines in it, and I freaking stole the show.
And would you say that was it? Was that the moment you decided you wanted to be a drag queen, or was there a more defining moment?
There was a more defining moment that came later. Like after that one show, I like started doing it every now and then, just kind of for parties or for Halloween or something like that. And there was always, I always wanted to be a part of the Icelandic drag competition, which is every Pride, and that was really the only remnant of the older drag scene here in Iceland. And I always wanted to take part of it because I knew I could do really well, and like it would be really fun. And it was in the beginning of 2015, yeah, that I really decided like, yep, this year I'm gonna take this seriously. I really want to do this. I'm gonna apply to be in the competition. I'm gonna win the competition, and then I'm gonna do something with the title to create more of a scene. I want more to be happening, and I've met so many people that also want things to be happening. And I think it was in the beginning, like, 3 years ago. That I really kind of started taking this seriously.
And you won.
And I did win. And I did, in cahoots with other amazing people, start Dragsugur, which is really kind of kicked life back into the drag scene here in Iceland.
Dragsugur has become one of the most successful queer events happening right now, and arguably one of the most successful queer events in Icelandic history. Tell me about how that began.
Well, that all began with this idea. It's not necessarily just mine. There were a bunch of other people with a similar idea. They wanted something more to be happening in the drag scene, in the queer scene. And it began really when I met Hafsteinn Himiljómi, or who is now the drag queen Ragnarök. And we kind of molded our ideas together. And then we met a couple of more people. And it was Thorallur, who, we 3... kind of started discussing this and making this happen. Like, yes, let's do it next November. This was in like August, September. I was like, yep, we'll do it in a month. We need someone to host this. We need someone to help this. And Thorallur was like, yeah, I met this guy on a date the other day. Oh, it's Jonathan Duffy. That's how I met you. And yeah, and then I would really say kind of the 4 of us made it what it is, and we found a bunch of other performers that we knew of and wanted to highlight in this first show. And we contacted Páll Óskar if he wanted to be a part of it, and he was like, yes, I'll finish off the show and I'll like use my media plugs to do whatever. And it was just so many people, and you just felt this surge of positivity regarding it. And we had no idea that it would be more than just one show. This first show was we're just gonna be a show that is not a competition, just as a queer event that's gonna be fabulous and fun, filled with drag people.
And it was hugely successful.
Indeed. And we've been doing it every month ever since. And it's gotten so popular now, and I think it's absolutely fabulous, and I'm so immensely proud.
Is it true that it's so popular that you don't even advertise, it just fills up?
We've never really had to advertise, and like after our 6th show, it just started selling out pretty much every time. And yeah, we've never advertised more than just creating an event on Facebook, sometimes posting it.
So, in the creation of the character of Gogo Star, who has been featured in commercials for restaurants, she's regularly hosting events, she regularly performs. What kind of influences did you have in creating her, and were there any influences from Iceland?
I would say there were a lot of influences, but I don't think I specifically thought of anyone when creating the character. It just sort of comes out. But when I think about like where those elements of myself draw their experiences, I would say I'm very physical comedy based. And I think that really comes from Rowan Atkinson, like Mr. Bean, and also Icelandic comedians and actors Latte and Edda Björgvins. And kind of my humor is very reflective of, I would say, like old Icelandic sketch comedy. So I watched a lot as a kid, like Spökstofan and always Áramótaskaupið and such. And then I would also say that Sylvia Nótt, who I would kind of contribute as the most famous Icelandic drag queen, going on Eurovision and racking up everything.
For those that don't know, Sylvia Nótt was a character created by Augusta Eva, an actress in Iceland who entered the Eurovision Song Competition in the early to mid 2000s, and she was quite a character.
Indeed, and she was very, very extravagant and very, very bratty, and just like kind of a stereotypical drag queen. And she was a woman, which made it even more scandalous. And I think just seeing that on TV and seeing that that was quote unquote allowed, it really kind of helped me. Even though my Gogo Star isn't quite there in the obnoxious factor, I would say. It really kind of draws from that experience of, okay, I mean, I'm just doing myself. If people don't like it, they can go somewhere else. And I don't know, I love what I do.
And what you are doing has paid off to the point where being Gogo and working as a drag queen is pretty much now your full-time job. So a big question a lot of people would want to know for any kind of performer is, how did you make that transition from it being a hobby to it being your full-time job?
I think the most important thing, well, considering me and my journey at least, and I would tell anyone who wants to do the same, is that it's really kind of a leap of faith. You don't know what will happen, and as soon as you start thinking of it yourself as more than a hobby, as soon as you start thinking of this as, well, this has to be my job now, like I don't have anything else, then you can make the transition. And as soon as you take that look inward and really look at it as your job, people will do the same. Until you do that, they will not. And yeah, just be really good at faking it.
With your success, have you noticed any negative impacts within the drag community in Iceland?
Well, jealousy is a real thing, and I would say yes. I've noticed quite a shift of people's attitude towards me, and yeah, I noticed that a lot of people kind of keep me at a distance and take issue with the things that I do or how I do them, and more often than not, I see it as like, well, they would want this for themselves, and I don't know, I don't really care how people view me or my success, because it's for me, it's not for them. And if they want it for themselves, then go and get it.
When it comes to dating or hookups or anything of the relationship nature, have you experienced discrimination because you're a drag queen here in Iceland?
I would say I've experienced a bit of discrimination, but I think it's more about the fact that I don't have eyebrows as a man. And I mean, being a drag queen is always just kind of an extra. I don't think it's off-putting, at least for the people that I seek after. And I've been like steadily dating one guy for the past 3 months, and he's my biggest supporter, and I love that. And the person I was dating before was a woman, and she is also a drag queen, and she took no issue with it whatsoever. And I think that's really what I look for in a person anyway, is that general acceptance and free expression and whatnot.
Along the way, did you ever experience fetishism about being a drag queen?
All the time. I mean, I guess you could call that discrimination. I didn't really think of that before, but I would say every time I was on like a dating app or even just in the club, if I was even remotely dressed up, because I really like to go out as a boy and like still have glitter on or something, to sparkle up my night. But all the time people would come up to me and just wanna sleep with me or do stuff with me or send me messages. Just because I was like, and like, can you do it in drag? Can you like pretend to be a woman? Or I don't know. I've never really gotten into that because I don't really connect my drag and what I do as a performer to my sex life.
So when you take off the wig and the heels and the lashes, at the end of the day, go-go is a separate entity from you, Sigge.
Indeed. And I would like to kind of, at the end of the day, lay the wig down on the nightstand and like leave her there.
And finally, what advice would you give to someone who is interested in drag or just starting out?
Don't be afraid to try it out and just experiment. And I would say like go to a drag show, and even if you're too young, like look at videos, like look for inspirations in different things, and think if you want to do it, I would recommend doing something more than just putting on a wig and like, now I'm a bitchy female. Like, try to be like, what matches with your personality? What do you want to do? Do you want to go on stage, or do you just want to be a fabulous runway model, or like, what are your dreams? What are your aspirations, and what fits for your character? But most of all, just don't be afraid and just do it. Who cares what people think?
And what do you hope for the future of drag in Iceland?
I really want the scene that we've created to keep on growing, keep on getting bigger, keep on getting a bit more into mainstream media. I want people to just know what drag is and love it just half as much as I do, would be plenty. And I don't know, I just would love to see it thrive, and for younger people to be more included, and for the queer scene really to kind of get bigger, better, and more open.
In a nation with a population smaller than Nice in France, you wouldn't be wrong in wondering if Iceland is big enough to have more than one drag superstar. The truth of the matter is that there are a number of kings and queens who are fast developing their own fan bases. One of these is also a drag daughter of Go-Go Star, Deaf Star. The artistically inclined creation of British-born Neve Ingley, Deaf Star has become one of the most popular queens in this country in a comparatively short space of time. With performances that don't fit the traditional mold of TV-safe drag and an Instagram following that many would be jealous of, this performer has begun to dominate. How does one rise to such success so quickly? What are the challenges for a drag performer when you're a foreigner in Iceland? And how does sex help sell a drag performance? So Deaf Star, you've become known as a bit of a queen that doesn't really fit into the traditional mold of what people have seen on TV in drag. One of the things about you as a performer is that you definitely stick out from others. Can you explain a little bit about how your aesthetic differs from other queens?
Well, I guess when I first started doing drag, I kind of wanted to at least try to do like some aspect of traditional drag, but then like very quickly I kind of realized that it just didn't suit me. It just didn't like feel like it was me as a performer. I felt like I was not being myself. I felt like I was not being like the character that I wanted to portray. So I kind of just started to like figure out sort of like what kind of drag that I wanted to do, and like how much of a transformation I needed to make in order to be considered a drag queen still, and not just like performing artist. So it kind of started with not shaving, because I always felt like I didn't need to be completely smooth in order to be considered like feminine. And then the facial hair kind of started to come through, and that was just like something to play around with, really. And in terms of like clothing and aesthetics, I didn't want to feel like I was changing too much about my body, because I'm quite happy with the way that I look, and like I don't feel like we need to completely cover ourselves in order to like perform, because I feel like it's more honest and truthful if you're kind of like bearing all. So with regards to like fashion and clothing, I kind of just considered like what I could still portray as like feminine, but still keep a little bit of that masculinity there, just to kind of like show that like, you know, I am a man and I have both sides, both in drag and out of drag. And that kind of just, yeah, it ended up becoming like an aesthetic style for me, so.
Here in Iceland, you're very popular as a performer, and it's you know, it happened in a very quick time. What do you think has made you such an audience favorite so fast?
I guess I know that I can perform well on stage. I generally like give 150% when I'm there. I kind of enter this like shamanic trance and just become like this weird, like have this weird amount of energy. And I guess like people are there to be entertained, so it kind of like grabs the audience and kind of holds them there. But then I think as well as like, because I am doing different things and I'm not doing like always traditional pop music, or I'm choosing like a song that's like actually like a male song, or just kind of like adding the performance art like aspects into my drag, it kind of just gives something more interesting for people to look at, rather than like just a simple lip sync. It's kind of conveying a bit more of an idea, which I feel is like really important to have, like to be able to show like emotion and passion on stage, rather than just like doing something because it's popular.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned before that there's quite a lot of masculinity, not only in your performance, but in your look. Is there more of a reason for it? Can you delve a little bit more into the conscious choice of why you decided to keep it after audiences had seen you?
Okay, so drag is like dramatic role as girl. And we're now in a stage in like the world like where really a female can be just as masculine as a male can be feminine. I don't think that women need to be feminine all the time, just like men don't need to be masculine all the time. And I think it's kind of that idea that like I want to portray like a very strong, powerful, like almost aggressive at times, like drag character who's got both parts of the gender in them. And I don't want to be relying on like pretty. I want to kind of show that like we can be beautiful but being ugly, or being like different. And I guess it kind of comes from that idea of there being, you know, that like gender is on a spectrum, so why not a drag queen is also on a spectrum. I mean, we're playing with gender, we're just deconstructing it and just like reconstructing it in how we see fit. I go to the gym like a lot, and I see women there who are like bigger than me. They're like really masculine women, and it just like gets me excited for like I really admire that, because they just do what they want to do, and they're not ashamed of not being seen as like pretty or feminine. And I think it's like really empowering to see that.
What do you think a drag audience expect from a performer in Iceland?
I think in Iceland, it's slightly different to the States and the UK, because of the history of music here, and it's and arts and things like that. I think an audience generally expects more than just a casual lip sync to like a diva song. I think the audience here is quite diverse. Like usually if you go to a drag show in the States or the UK, it's just a load of gay men. But here we have like a huge variety of like people in the audience. We have like straight women, gay men, like straight men, like everyone. So I think generally they expect a little bit more of, is a bit more theatrical, a little bit more cabaret than what you would expect in other countries. But I think it's nice that we have that here, because it kind of like also like it generally just challenges the idea of like what is drag in general. Yeah.
Leading on from that, how, for example, do you go about choosing the songs and themes for your performances?
I usually have like a mental database of songs I like and songs that like I feel connected to and give me some sense of emotion, because I feel like you need that in order to perform a song. You need to be able to be somehow emotionally connected to it, whether it's not you just really, really like the song or like it provokes some feeling inside you. But then also we've had like themes with Dragsuga, so I've kind of always, you know, tried to think of then a song that also connects to a theme, that then also connects to some kind of aesthetic that I want to do. But yeah, mainly it's a personal choice of song, and I just hope then that the audience will enjoy that song, like, or enjoy the music, or I'd make them enjoy it. I introduce them to something new that they haven't seen before.
Social media has begun playing a huge role in so many performers' lives in the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. Instagram has become a huge tool for drag queens to get their looks, their message, and out and build their fan base. Mm-hmm. You've got quite a large fan base. And your Instagram in particular, it does have a lot of, I guess you would, you know, if I were in the 40s, I would say racy images. So you have, there's quite a lot of images of you in your Instagram in and out of drag that are artistically beautiful. And there's also a lot of sensuality to them and a lot of skin. Mm-hmm. How much of a role do you believe that plays in building a fan base?
The nakedness. I think a pretty big role, to be honest. I mean, like, I guess, like, say, most of the followers that I have on Instagram are more interested in the drag, but then there obviously is, like, they're following me because I'm a drag queen. But then there is obviously, like, a lot of fans who do, like, you know, the, like, racier images, as you would say. I think as well, like, I think the best, like, images I've had on there is when I'm actually, like, both, like, where it's a combination of, like, this drag aesthetic with then, you know, this, like, very, like, masculine body. And I think that's generally, like, the fusion of those two kind of provokes sort of, like, some ideas in people's heads about gender and what is gender. But yeah, obviously, yeah, being naked is gonna make you popular on Instagram. Like everybody's doing it on Instagram. I just happen to be also a drag queen, and generally though my nudes and stuff aren't just like gym selfie kind of like look at me sort of like narcissistic tendencies. It's more like real life, or like I just wanted to show like a beautiful part of me from a beautiful angle in some nice lighting because it's pretty. I think does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And you've managed to get that fan base without having to buy followers, which is something that a lot of people throughout the world have started doing.
Yeah.
Do you know of other queens who've done that?
Of course I do.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is it expensive?
No, I don't even think it's like expensive, but I think it's a waste of time. What's the point in having people follow you if they're not even interested in you? it doesn't make any sense. I'd rather have like less followers, but people that are actually actively interested in what I'm doing. When you actually break down Instagram, it's based on, you know, that your popularity is based on your interaction with an audience. If you have like 2,000 followers, but you're only getting like 50 likes on a photo, then your audience isn't paying attention to you, which is the most important thing. So I'd rather have less followers but more activity on my page, like more involvement with me, and more like actually more conversations with people, like, you know, like with, you know, these direct messages. They're not all like, hey, got any nudes? Like sometimes we actually make connections with people from across the world, and we can go visit them, we can do projects with them, we can learn from them. Like, you know, I've been talking to like dancers and other artists and photographers, pole dancers, and other visual artists and stuff. So it's really nice to make these connections with people. It's not about like how many people like you, it's about like the intensity of that connection with the person.
And as we can hear from your accent, you're originally from the UK. Is it harder for a queen in Iceland when you're foreign?
I think so. Like, I think it's giving you already a slight disadvantage just because of like connections within the gay community. Obviously easier to be made if you are local and you speak Icelandic. And I do feel like sometimes I have to fight a little bit harder just to get attention. But I'm very lucky that the people around me, the people who are Icelandic, my fellow like drag queens and stuff, do support me and do help me and do nurture me. And I've worked with, like, I'm obviously really close with Gogo because obviously she's my drag mum, and we're constantly like meeting and bouncing ideas off each other and doing shows together and stuff, and that really, really helps. But also Starina and Aurora as well, I've just worked with them for the boys only party, and it was just really nice that they really like wanted to work with me and like wanted to help. We wanted to help each other. And I think the difference is that like in drag sugar and like us drag queens in general, like we're a family, like we've all got with this one thing in common, so we generally stick together. So it doesn't really matter who is like Icelandic, who's not Icelandic. At the end of the day, like we're all like a family, and we've got this one thing that like connects us. So I mean, I think I generally could easily overcome that. Also, I generally just like, you know, I guess I'm quite aggressive at my approach to drag and in general getting where I want to be. So I don't think it's going to hold me back.
And talking about getting where you want to be, is there longevity for you here in Iceland, or do you think you will eventually have to leave if you want to pursue it further?
I would love to stay like in Iceland, and I feel like Iceland's become my home. I've been here for a while now, and I will be staying for a little bit longer because I feel like there's a little bit more work for us to do in order to really like make drag happen and stay. It's grown quite a lot, but there's like we need to make sure that the like next generation of queens is going to be like they're ready to take over. So I'm going to be staying like a little bit longer to help that out. And I'm, you know, if I do leave, I'm going to be coming back here. So you bitches ain't going to get rid of me. I'm going to come back just like gonorrhea. But yeah, I do have obviously ambitions of, you know, moving to a country where I can do this a little bit more frequently. And since I'm putting my heart and soul into it, I feel like I should be making a lot more money off it, because I want this, you know, to support me. Like, why not have like your passion, your job? Like, that's like the most fulfilling thing in life. So I'm gonna probably have to move eventually. No idea where yet. Like somewhere with cheaper wigs.
Finally, do you have any advice for anyone who is starting out in drag or is looking to get into drag or is just curious? Do you have any piece of advice of things that you've learned that you wish maybe someone had told you?
Yeah, I would just say, like, the most important thing is to, like, be yourself, really. Like, listen to other people. You have to listen to other people every now and again, but you need to pick and choose, like, when you should take someone's advice. Like, you're right, it's like, drag is like building a character, so it's part of you, so you really need to make sure that you don't lose that part of you. You need to make sure that you're yourself and you're doing the exactly type of drag that you love and you enjoy. And, also, like, don't limit yourself as well. Like, try, experiment and try different things. You don't need to always be, especially when you're starting out, you don't need to always be doing one exact style of drag. You can experiment for a little while before you really find your, like, niche. I mean, I've been experimenting a hell of a lot this year with different stuff, and I'm kind of only really just starting to find, like, really where my niche is when I'm thinking about it. Oh yeah, like, learn how to dance. That would be, that's pretty. Learn how to dance. Practice your makeup a lot. Just keep practicing with the makeup. Go on holiday and buy, like, really cheap stuff abroad and bring it back to Iceland.
When many people think of drag, they probably don't think of the long-term health implications. Many queens who perform for years in drag have anecdotally stated that hip and foot issues, persistent urinary tract infections, and allergic reactions to eyelash glue are commonplace things that the general public don't ever think about. Imagine what those implications might mean for you if you already had physical issues to deal with. Ólafur Helgi Ólafsson is well known in Iceland as the legendary drag queen Starina. In 2003, Starina was the winner of Miss Drag Iceland. Ole also has hereditary motor and sensory neuropathy, a genetic degenerative disorder which affects muscles and nerves progressively. As a veteran of drag in Iceland, Starina has seen the rise and fall of multiple drag scenes, and has become somewhat of a reluctant role model for queer people living with disabilities. I chatted with Ole to find out more about the past, present, and future of drag, as well as the challenges Starina has faced both on stage and behind the curtain. Can you give me a bit of a rundown of what you would call drag history in Iceland?
Are you asking me this question? Oh my god. Drag history of Iceland. Well, I started doing drag like in the queer community back in 2002. There was a lot of things going on before that, which I do not remember. But Páll Óskars was doing a lot of things. And then there was a group called, I think, the Divas. There was a group making fun of the Spice Girls. When I started doing drag back in 2002, there was this drag queen called Mio. She's my drag mother, living in Norway now. And I think she was the first that broke the rule of normal drag queens in Iceland. She started doing more like boy drag, still being very feminine, but skipping the breasts and stuff like that. The history of the drag queen competition is how I got to know drag in Iceland.
So how did the competition work?
Well, when I started, it was only queens, no kings. It was always themed somehow. Before I started, I heard it was usually like pageants. And then they changed it into like Eurovision theme. There was an Oscar theme when I won the crown. Back in 2005, they changed it. They added the kings, and it started being more like talent show. So it started changing that way, and around 2005, it just really died away slowly. And that was the only thing happening in drag in Iceland for a while. That was the competition.
Can you think of any reasons why it maybe did sort of die off after 2005?
Bad queens? No. No, I don't know. I really don't know. Well, Mio Amore, she lost interest for a while. So, and I also felt like I lost interest. It was just not much happening. People weren't responding to it, I think. It was maybe just like, oh, boy in a dress, that's not funny anymore. I'm not sure though.
And so in the last 2 years, there's been a huge drag resurgence in Icelandic queer society. I guess my first question is, what do you think has prompted that? If you said before audiences didn't seem to be interested in drag so much anymore, what has changed between that kind of 2005 dip and, you know, going back to 2015 when it all picked up again? What do you think has been different for audiences?
I blame RuPaul. I think it's just got more commercialism. You know, it's like rock. It started by being aggressive. Rock and roll was all about being aggressive and being outside of the box, and then it's changed into commercialism, and everyone loves it, and it gets so amazing. I think that's the reason.
So do you think it's been a positive change or a negative one?
Well, in kind of a way, it's a positive way. I mean, it's more accepting, and people are loving us. I think that's the positive side of it. But I think we still need to be aggressive.
And how do you think it has changed for you as a performer now compared to back then, when things were a bit more, as you said, rock?
Oh, well, when I started doing drag, I was more influenced by Kylie Minogue, which is very pop commercialism. And I loved this show. They were so big, they were so glamorous. But in kind of a way, I joined this drag group called Hégómi back in 2004, where I got to know my drag mother really well. And she started like pushing me over the edge, do something funny, do something that no one will expect you to say, expect you to do, or whatever. So I started like doing fun of drag queens in the pageant, you know, making my hair really big and having braces with glitter on it and stuff like that. Today, I think I still have that quality, trying to entertain audience with some kind of a laugh instead of just being very fabulous in my beautiful dresses.
And how did Starina come into existence? Tell us about how that character was created.
Oh, wow. Starina is still developing. I'm always adding to her character, changing her a little bit. I mean, it's first, the name Starina was made when I was in college back in Breiðholt. And I was doing this play. I got really, really good reviews from it, and people were talking about me a lot in town. And the kids in school started as a joke calling me Ole the Star, and I wanted a drag name, and somehow Starina came out of it. Like it was like mixture of Olina and Star, and first she started being this showgirl, wanted to entertain everyone. And then I started adding a little bit of this influence, which I call Stepfor's wife. You know, even though I'm not saying Starina is a robot, but she loved the household. She loves cooking. She loves doing all these non-PC stuff. She's very fond of the normal way. If I quote it somehow like that, I don't know how to explain it.
Like the old world, the 50s,
Yes.
homeliness.
The homeliness, yes. And I mean, I think it kind of a way, if I take that character, because I don't know why I am so fond of it also as a personal, on just a personal level. So I thought, like, if I take this, because it's so wrong, and I try to make fun of it. And I'm always trying to add something to Starina, but I mean, she has been so much. She's been a superhero, and then she all of a sudden is cooking in the kitchen as an alcoholic. So,
and that brings me to my next question. Your performances definitely are unique compared to a lot of the other queens in Iceland. Can you describe for me, what sets them apart from what people are used to seeing on stage in drag in Iceland?
My show, what sets them apart? I don't know. I really don't know. I just find these ideas and I just wanna perform them. There's not always a reason why I wanna do stuff. It's just, I like that. I wanna do this, or I just find a dress and I think, what can I do in this dress? Because I've studied fashion design, so I always try to picture a story behind the clothing I'm wearing, and that how somehow I develop an act around that. If I go the other way around, if my act Barbie Girl, I wanted to do Barbie, but I needed the dress. And it took so long time to find the dress because I had the act. And then it went too much time in finding the dress. Instead of usually I develop a dress and then what can I do around that?
That was what I was going to get to next. You actually studied fashion design in Italy.
Yes.
Yes. And I was going to say, so what kind of role does being a fashion designer play in your drag? But from the sounds of things, it has made you a performer that finds the clothing first, and then the performance comes from the clothing.
Yeah, usually it does that. But in drag show, it hasn't happened like that. I started, when I started in drag shows, I was also starting school here in Iceland, studying tailoring. So I got a job at the bridal shop Katarina in Mjöten, and I didn't have any time to make the dresses anymore. So drag show changed the way I developed my act. So drag show, which I liked often about drag show, they had themes. So I started I want to do this theme, and then I somehow work from that. Just like my dresses, I had the theme of a dress, and then that way I made an act. I always think clothing make the person, and that's what my thesis was about, how I can tell a story with clothing, how clothing is influenced in movies, and how they tell what kind of character that is.
The next thing I want to talk about is you are a person with a disability. What kind of challenges have you faced in the drag world just from that alone?
In the drag world alone? Oh, wow. Well, I didn't think about it. And then after a while, I wasn't sure if people were hiring me to perform to make fun of it, or they thought I was a really good performer. That has always scared me a little bit, let's hire Starina and we can make fun of her. She's really funny jumping around in those two big high heels or whatever. And when I came back from Milan, because when I was living in Milan, the drag wasn't happening much in my life. But when I came back, I started like I had my comeback 2015, same time as Drag Tour started, and I always feared that people like, oh, what a great drag queen Starina is because has a disability, and so maybe I'm getting my praises just for being disabled instead of like, this is a really, really good act.
Do you feel it makes you work harder than you probably would if you weren't a person with a disability?
Yes, definitely. I felt that at the Drag Tour Extravaganza last time. I was doing an old act from 2005, and I was doing Your Disco Needs You by Kylie, my winning act, and I have stopped wearing high heels because of my feet are getting worse by age, and so I had to start learning again, walking on new shoes, dancing, which I haven't done in drag show a lot. I'm usually just on stage, standing there, miming so that was really, really hard for me. And I felt like, you have to work like this to make that. Okay, I can't do this, I can't do that. What can I do instead to make the act look good?
So in essence, you probably have to put in extra effort for yourself as well, because it sounds like you before, when you were talking about the confusion over wondering whether people were thinking it was a good act or they're just loving it because you're a person with a disability. To me, it sounds a lot like what you would call imposter syndrome, where you're getting amazing praise and you have this voice inside of your head that's saying, no, you're not good enough. You have to work harder. And it sounds to me like, in a way, being someone with a disability has kind of made you this consummate performer who is just constantly questioning whether you're good enough.
Yes, I'm always questioning if I'm good enough. If I'm having an idea, I want to do it so well. Even learning tailoring now at Tekniskólinn, the disability is also very hard for me to sew. So if it takes me 3 hours to hand sew just a small hem, I get so frustrated because it's just, this is too difficult, I can't do this, and then I get praise, oh, this is really well done. And I'm like, you're just saying that because I have this disability. But I never say to myself, well, this was a really good job.
You never take the compliment.
No, I never. No, I always have this little voice in my head, like, it's just because of the disability. I don't know where it comes from, because even with that voice, I still keep on going. I think I'm the youngest child of my mother, so I was very protected, and I'm the fourth, and we are three with this disability of my brothers. So somehow my mom had fought a lot for my other two brothers, and when the time came for me, she knew how to protect me from all the stuff. So I think also a family life has developed that protective feeling. Oh, Ollie doesn't have to get hurt, And then life started, and I had to go out there and face all the challenges on my own.
At the risk of starting a family war, do you think having to do all this on your own has made you more hardworking than your brothers?
Well, I think we're all hardworking, so no, I wouldn't say so.
It's a nice diplomatic answer. I guess leading on from that, do you feel like you have become a role model for people with disabilities? And is there a pressure that comes along with that?
Yes, it is a pressure, because like I'm opening myself up now to saying these things that I have this voice in my head, it makes me like, oh no, I have to show everyone I can do it, I can make it, da da da. And if I can't, I feel like such a failure.
My question for you is, when it comes to putting on a show, there's a great number of non-drag queens who go into making it happen. Can you tell us a little bit more about the people involved in the show who may not put on a wig or a beard and get on the stage and perform? Like what kind of things are happening behind the scenes?
Oh, wow. Okay. I love working behind the scenes, and that's why I'm still studying tailoring, because I want to get behind the scenes at the theater. Usually when I'm doing my drag, it's a group of friends, and we have a makeup artist, we have a helper person who is like a runner, and then we have even a hairstylist or whatever. We have dancers. Like when I was putting on a show before drag shows in the old days, I always had a group of team with me. I had my best friend who was also very good at sewing and designing, and then I had the makeup artist with me, and then I had probably 2 or 4 or even 6 dancers, and one of them was the choreographer, and I think it was just a very amazing group all together, working on every little piece. You know, it was like a workshop. If I had to make like a t-shirt on everyone, they all came to help, and I just like, oh, we have to glue glitter on this and do this. And I think it's just amazing how people behind the scenes are willing to do all this stuff. Especially in drag show, I've noticed it a lot. Everyone is so willing to help us out to make this happen.
And in a way, it's kind of a thankless job, because they don't get up on the stage. They don't get the fans coming to see them at the end of the show. So they're purely doing this because they love making it happen.
Yes, I felt that like my friends who are helping me, they love doing this just because they love seeing me on stage and making other people happy.
So in a way, it's kind of like the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yes.
It takes a glam squad to raise a drag queen. How do you see the future of drag in Iceland?
I've thought about it, and I do not know what will happen next. I think it's very interesting because I felt like it exploded. It's everywhere now. And I'm like, how long will this last? Is this a phenomenon, or is this here to stay? You know?
Because in a way, it did explode in the early 2000s as well, before it trickled down.
Yes, it did explode there. And it was... But I think in kind of a way we can still keep it going. It doesn't have to die again.
Do you think it will completely rely on making sure that there are members of the community who want to keep it alive and keep it a quality product?
Yes, I think that's very important. I mean, I think it's very important for every performance art that if we want something to keep on going, we have to even like sometimes just slow down and make more quality than quantity.
Finally, I've asked all the queens in this show this question. Do you have any advice for someone starting out or wanting to get into drag?
Well, if someone wants to start doing drag, I just say go for it. Start doing your makeup. There's one thing that I never did was going clubbing in drag. So I think that's a good way to practice your makeup, practice your sewing skills, practice your hair, you know, just go out there and try to look fabulous. And then I think its most important part is to be a good actor. So study study acting or go join some community where you can study a little bit acting, go to these acting groups or whatever. Because I think making a drag queen, you're making a character and you have to play her very well, or him if you're a king. So
drag has definitely seen a renaissance in Iceland in the past couple of years. The introduction of drag into the mainstream via shows like Drag Race has seen an intoxicating flurry of pop culture into the homes of people who just a decade ago would never have understood the words work or yas queen. It's entirely possible that the current success of drag in Iceland is a direct result of the times we live in. As a stand-up comedian myself, I can attest to an audience shift, even in the past 2 years. People are more savvy and woke than ever. We all have entertainment in the palm of our hands almost 24 hours a day, so to go to the effort of leaving your house to go to a club with live entertainment, it better have a payoff. The success of the current drag nightlife scene in Iceland is a result of this. And in a time when millennials are consistently blamed for being ambivalent non-contributors, it should be understood that one of the most successful regular queer events in Icelandic history is run mainly by people who fit into this age category, and they do so with both integrity, artistic flair, and respect for those who paved the way before them. Nobody is sure what will happen next for drag in Iceland, but one thing to take away from this is that if you want this as an audience member to stay alive for generations to come, get out, go to a club, and tip your kings and queens.